You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 491, our coverage breakdown of The Outpost, which is the latest episode from the Bad Batch. And before we came on the air, Jonesy and I were kind of talking about whether or not this was the best episode of the Bad Batch. I think we had said that when we last covered the Solitary Clone, which I think was the second or third episode of this season, and just kind of coincidental, maybe not, that now we're arguing about whether or not this is the best episode. So we've got a lot to say about that, and whether this is really the best or one of the best. And speaking of the best, hey, look who's here with us tonight. He was a good soldier. His name is Jonesy. Jonesy's with us. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?
I'm better. I slept all day yesterday, was dead to the world all day yesterday, and I feel like a million times better. So sorry about the reschedule. That's on me. But otherwise, I'm doing great.
That's excellent, man, because we got a action-packed show tonight. So we're gonna need you at your best. So I'm glad you're well rested and everything else, because we got a bunch of news to get through, and I have a feeling we're gonna have a lot to say about, like you said, was arguably the best Bad Batch episode to date, season 1 or 2, and some really powerful stuff. I mean, you talk about like getting ready to really throw you into the finale and get you, like, the last 4 episodes here are just going to be incredible. I don't know what to expect. It's starting to give a little bit of new light to some of these other titles, though, that some people haven't seen quite yet, which I think is fun. So I'm excited to see where this is taking us, and really excited to talk about this episode tonight.
Yeah, me too. But before we do, maybe
I was trying to get another person's name in there. I thought you were going to talk on like you usually do.
That was my cool, slick segue over to the news. Jonesy, let's go to you live with the news tonight.
Thank you, Albert Padilla. Not so great news to start things off. Let's just get the negative stuff out of the way. A couple of projects sound like they are officially canned, or officially not going forward is probably more accurate. Patty Jenkins and Kevin Feige, both of their projects do not appear to be going anywhere. And Taika Waititi's is still in motion. I think he's still developing that treatment and that overall process, the writing and everything else. So that is still on the roadmap. We'll see if that remains or not. But some disappointing news there from Patty Jenkins and Kevin Feige, especially after all the stuff from Patty Jenkins before. It just seems like this is roller coaster of whether or not it was happening or not. This is the process. This is also, who knows if Bob Iger and company have anything to say about some of this stuff too. It's all speculation at this point. Nothing's really all that public. But again, disappointing news. Again, more uncertainty for the movie franchise side of things. But then again, a little bit par for the course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's uncertainty on this front, but I think we've got, by all the good counts, looks like we're going to have some news come in during Celebration. So I think on the movie front, it's not dead, but, were these other movies going to make it out? Probably not. Bob Iger said a lot of things here very recently about, I'm going to call it quality over quantity, although that's not really what he's saying. I think people are kind of taking that and kind of compartmentalizing it into that kind of phrase. But this may just kind of line up with that as well. So it could be a different direction, or I guess a new direction that Bob wants to take it in. It just kind of lends itself naturally to shelving these for now, putting the focus on the movie that we know we're going to get announced probably here in Celebration, or think we're going to get announced here during Celebration. And that's okay. One movie is going to be enough to get everybody talking and get everybody excited all over again. So.
Right. And on, speaking of Bob Iger, Uncle Bob here, he did get quoted though. So he was at the Morgan Stanley Technology, Media and Telecom Conference. Say that 5 times fast. This was last week. And he did come out with the following quote. He said, quote, just last night, I got a clip of a Star Wars series that will air on Disney Plus in 2024 called The Acolyte. That looks brilliant. TV or television series is working for Lucasfilm. So, and that last part was kind of filled in the blanks there. But Acolyte still filming, right? So it's actually ongoing right now, still in Portugal. I don't think it wraps up until sometime later this month. This is March 2023 for those listening in the future. Again, confirmed that Acolyte is not 2023, which again, to me felt like a super long shot anyway.
Pretty aggressive, yeah.
Yeah, it would have been, especially with them still doing things. I know they kind of started back like in October, but I have a feeling the news on this front's been a little bit, off and on, a little bit sketchier than what we've got from like Skeleton Crew, and that's been pretty,
Right.
moderate as well. But anyway, so next year, some point, which makes sense. This year is pretty much full anyway. So I think that again, no surprises there. But again, early returns from Uncle Bob seem pretty good. That Acolyte is on the way forward, right?
Yeah, and I think based on that now too, we can probably make an assumption. Although I was going to say we can make an assumption that we may not get much at Celebration with that, but we said the same thing about Ahsoka, right? And Ahsoka was filming. I mean, they literally came from filming over to Celebration on that Saturday, right?
Right. Within that week, they already had a little bit of something, right?
Yeah, so they gave us a little bit of something. So I'm hopeful that that precedence has been set now, and that we will probably get some kind of a, if it's not behind the scenes and it's like super brief, 30 seconds, no voiceovers, just music, quick shots of what we can expect in the Acolyte. So, it's, keep your fingers crossed. Should happen.
But speaking of Celebration news, man, this is really rolling into one another today. This has really worked out well. You'd almost think I put a little thought into this. Celebration Europe news, again, this is April 7th through the 10th, is just around the corner. We are just a few weeks away, if you could believe that. They released the official panel schedule. So everything is set in stone for all of the official stuff that you're going to get. And so a few of those notables real fast. So on Friday, April 7th, of course, the one that everyone's super excited about is going to be the Lucasfilm Showcase. Now, you and I haven't really talked about this quite yet in any specific detail, but if we were to speculate, I'm going to throw a few things out here. Tell me yes or no, we're going to get one.
Okay.
Skeleton Crew, either a sizzle, probably not a trailer, but maybe a sizzle reel behind the scenes, something like that.
I would say sizzle reel, definite.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't get a teaser trailer of sorts, right? Again, 30 seconds, but official trailer rather than more than just images.
Okay. All right. Again, just on Lucasfilm Showcase, Ahsoka. Do you think we will get anything beyond maybe the actors coming up in so a trailer or a sizzle? There is an Ahsoka panel on Saturday.
They'll probably save it for the panel. That would be my guess. We'll probably get some more behind the scenes stuff, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay. Andor season 2 has not started filming, but do you think we'll get a general announcement? Do you think we'll get confirmation? Yeah, it's coming. Anything around Andor, at least an acknowledgement there?
I'd love for them to, but that seems like kind of a far shot at this point, since they haven't even started filming. I mean, if anything, it's going to be directors, producers talking about, we're so excited about, coming back for season 2. And that's probably going to be it.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is fine.
Yeah, I think if anything, that's all it's going to be. Do you think maybe we'll get an Acolyte behind the scenes or sizzle reel? Even though, again, to your point before, just an early indication, a first look, a sneak peek, something like that into what they have filmed?
Yeah, I think more BTS, if they're going to be pushing that. I think there'd be a missed opportunity not to, and then hit us with a trailer or something. I haven't even looked at the other panels too, so I don't know where they would squeeze that in unless there's something very specific about it. They could hold both this and any other formal trailers until the very end, right? They could do the sizzle reel and everything and then say, oh, but before you go, we don't want you to leave without, something substantial, and dim the lights, cue the trailers. They have a tendency to do that, something like that.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we got any kind of real, maybe a behind the scenes of just them shooting and talking with the director, maybe a little thing with Acolyte. I think that's probably about it. I can't imagine us having a trailer at this point.
No, yeah, no, and I'm not saying trailer, but it, if we hear any, I don't even know where they would shoe that in, honestly.
Right, yeah, the showcase is about it. So, again, on the showcase, maybe a little bit of Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny. Again, kind of keep that funnel. This is the right crowd for it.
Oh, yeah.
And then, what's the something new? Do you think this is going to be like a Lindelof or something like that?
Yeah, I think we'll get a title. I think we'll probably get, I think we'll get a logo. I think we'll get a title. They may bring out, if, you can get into the rumors if you want. I mean, it's everybody's been mentioned already, but all indications are that they are kind of shooting for something post the Rise of Skywalker, which, if you're reading the tea leaves, it sounds like Daisy Ridley possibly could be coming back. So, could they bring her on stage as an announcement that she's going to be part of it? I can see them doing something like that, even though they don't release any details whatsoever. But that would firmly establish where we are on the timeline, because Rey is still alive, right? So that would be kind of neat too. I think that would get the fandom pretty crazy.
All right, hold that thought. We'll come back to that. All right, Saturday we've got Ahsoka. This is with both Filoni and Favreau. So again, probably getting the trailer. If it's not at the Lucasfilm Showcase, this seems like a ripe opportunity for that. It seems like this is probably where that would be. No need to go any further there. I'm sure all of the cast are going to be there as well. All right, Sunday, April 9th. This is where things get a little interesting. Villains of the sequel trilogy. So Ian McDiarmid, Andy Serkis, and Gwendolyn Christie will be there. A few others will be as well, but those are the actors. So again, interesting panel. I think this is along the lines of some of the ones we've had in the past, where celebrating Attack of the Clones or along those lines. Do you think this is somewhere we might get, if we were to get something of a Daisy Ridley type of announcement, that it would fit in this, or do you think now firmly back in the showcase?
Do you think we're going to get a dark Ray appearance here?
No, I didn't know if there were any commonalities or common themes here of focusing on a sequel trilogy. And again, all these characters are dead, so it doesn't matter. But
so says you. Well, here's what I would say. I find this very interesting that they're coming back and doing the villains of the sequel trilogy, and it's really we've only been 2 years, 3 years now since that movie came out too. So interesting that they're coming back and visiting that. I think it does lead credence to the fact that we probably are going to get some kind of a movie that's set in the future, kind of establishing these characters, reminding everybody, getting everybody excited about that. On the cusp of either some kind of teaser trailer thing at the showcase, or maybe it's a little bit later. I think it all lines up. Otherwise, I don't see why they would bring this back so soon. I mean, nobody's pining for, these villains to be on stage. And with Return of the Jedi right now, it seems like they've got a lot of time. They've got a lot of other things they could be talking about, a lot of other shows they could be talking about. So the timing just seems kind of weird and coincidental. Maybe not.
All right. Okay, also on Sunday is a look back at Obi-Wan Kenobi. That'll have Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen, Indira Varma, Villian Lara Blair, and Deborah Chow. So again, if you're a big fan of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, that'll be a fun one to either attend or hear about later on. And then on Monday the 10th, we'll have a Bad Batch panel. They've done this pretty much every celebration since that we've been going to them. So
yeah, really,
this will have Brad Rao, Jennifer Corbett, Athena Portillo, also D. Bradley Baker, and Michelle Long. A very similar cast to what we had last celebration as well. And then also on Monday, we'll have Visions Volume 2. This will have all of the executive producers and the filmmakers from each. And it sounds like we're going to get a first look at the Visions Volume 2 visuals. So not sure which ones or anything like that, but they participants will get a visual there. So absent from all of this, though, is really anything specific to Skeleton Crew, which again might be more in the Lucasfilm Showcase potentially, but really no dedicated session to it. Is that a red flag or anything for you, or is it no? It's just kind of early, and they just didn't make sense to fill it in here, or just not enough oomph behind it yet.
It seems like
a
it's
right
odd.
audience. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we still don't know the timing, right? I mean, we know it's this year, but we don't know exactly. Like it could land December 31st, right? As far as we know. So I think if it's that far out, then maybe it makes, maybe that's the indicator, right? I don't think it's necessarily a red flag by any means. It just may mean that we're not as far as long as some of us were hoping for. Because like you said, in here, the only place that I could see they slam that into is going to be that showcase. And that's not going to be enough time. I mean, that feels like if it was ready to go, they're shooting for like a summer launch or a fall launch. They'd want to have some other time to kind of really get that in front of the crowd. When is D23? Have you looked at that?
It's usually in the summer, I believe.
Okay, so maybe that's not always the best place for them to do this stuff because there's so much other stuff going on for Disney. But maybe they're saving it for that. But it feels like at some point it's going to have to get its limelight if they're going to launch this year, and that would be like a natural place I would expect them to stick that, because they usually don't do like Comic-Cons and all that stuff. It's usually, since Disney's come in, it's really been Disney, D23 and Star Wars Celebration that we get the majority of our news, right? Breaking news anyways.
Right. Yeah. And I can't remember if they I think they went back to San Diego Comic-Con last year, but again, I don't know if it was, I think it was a limited presence, definitely not trailer type of releases and things like that. But again, they've also been leaning on the sports events. So I don't know if opening weekend of NFL or something like that, or even if you wait later in the year until World Series and that type of thing. For baseball fans, maybe those are, if it's going to be a December type of release, if this does get pushed back further on. But
do you think with like a series such as Skeleton Crew, like the name is so nebulous, right? It doesn't mean a whole lot to anybody that's particularly into Star Wars, right? And so with something like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you can slam that into the start of the NFL season, Super Bowl trailer. Everybody knows at least who the character is. it just feels like with a skeleton crew, they've got to be thinking we've got to dedicate some time for us to sit down with audiences, get this in front of people, explain what this is and why they need to watch this, given that it is kind of an offshoot. I mean, even with the Bad Batch, right? At least that's a carryover from the Clone Wars, right? It was like a kind of a natural extension of that. The Mando, yeah, that broke the mold. It was brand new. Maybe they're kind of looking at it from that perspective, but I don't know. It just feels like they're going to have to dedicate some time to actually sit down and do a Q&A and all that, unless they're going to do it over like the Star Wars show and through YouTube and, Disney Plus promos, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
that's not really getting
to
your point though, that's not going to go get the rest of the audience. That's going to get your hardcores for the most part.
Yep.
And that's why I think major sports events are very effective from a marketing standpoint, because everybody's watching, or a lot of people are watching those events, and you can put it in front of people that might not otherwise be aware of, and they'll say Star Wars skeleton crew, right? So it'll still be associated with Star Wars very clearly. But I think those are the folks that they need to put it in front of. And then you follow up and you get the media machine rolling. I'm with you though. I think this is going to take more effort. And I think Acolyte too is going to be a similar path, because it's just not as obvious, right? It doesn't have the word Mandalorian or Ahsoka, some words that have just been synonymous with Star Wars for anywhere between 10 and 40 years, So I think you're right. But I think having an initial big bang with a big audience is really necessary.
Yep.
But anyway, so Celebration news. We won't have to wait much longer on all of that. You had another news item you slipped in here that I don't have any context for. So,
yeah, it says if I had $1 for every person that pinged me today, because there's now a Pelimato poster.
I thought about putting in the notes and having it all ready, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to spare you. I didn't even put it in the backlog.
You're too late. Like
she has the tooth missing and everything too.
She has the tooth missing and everything. Like, so if I got $1 for everybody that pinged me, I would have $8. There was 8 people that pinged me, and the person that pinged me first is here with us tonight. He was actually the first person. Chef Chris pinged me on this, and we had a good chuckle over this earlier today. Went out of his way to let me know, and I'm like, duh, I just couldn't believe it. So thank you, Chef Chris. I appreciate you looking out for me, brother. That's very sweet of you, and kind of sick at the same time. So thank you. Yeah, good for her. I'm glad she got a poster, in all fairness, because I think she's a great character. I really do. I find her kind of disgusting. So beyond that, otherwise I have no problems with her.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All
there
right.
you go.
Well, Dale did confirm D23 is September 8th. So that's around Labor Day. That's around opening weekend so there's a lot of things going on there. They don't really do a lot of trailers at D23 either. Usually it's a lot more behind the scenes stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do.
I know he'll save it all for the investors call, because that's where we really need to get it. Although they've done that before. I mean,
but they usually only do like sizzle reels and other stuff like that. They don't do like true in the detail. But anyway, we're getting a little long on time here. But anyway, a little housekeeping as well. Jedi Marvel Archive. Lauren's video on Jedi Battle Scars is absolutely killing it. You guys are missing a great review if you've not seen it quite yet. CantinaCast.com/YouTube. She has the full review. She's also got a spoiler-free review. It's more of a sneak peek if you want to rather read the book first. But so lots of views on that one, and lots of great comments and feedback, and she's responding to everybody. So please go out there and check that out. CantinaCast.com/YouTube. And then also I started putting social media and on Discord and everything for our next Q&A. So don't have a firm date of when we will do it. But if you would like to submit a question, CantinaCast.com/question. There's just a really short little form there, just a few questions. Let us know what you would like us to talk about, whether it's Mando, Bad Batch, Celebration, just whatever's on your mind. We will get those logged, and we'll get enough questions. We'll put a show together, and we will get it out there and answer all of your questions that you might have. So CantinaCast.com/question.
Yep.
We'll get you on that one. And then finally, thank you to all of our Patreon members, especially our now part of the tribe members: Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, and Josh. And then Delusions of Grandeur, Rod, and Kathy. Thank you everyone so much. If you are interested in Patreon, CantinaCast.com/Patreon will show you all of our options. And if you would like to toss a couple nickels, we would more than appreciate that. And you get access to a lot of exclusive content. So hopefully it's a win-win for everyone.
20 nickels will get, or no, 100 nickels will get you into the paid content. So,
yes.
Is that math right?
No, it's not right, but that's okay. You try.
Hey, you know what? That's fine.
It's like
because
40,
you know what I like to talk about?
40. It's like 40 nickels.
Let's not talk about math. Let's talk about Star Wars. All right, let's talk about the Outpost. Do you want to start this? Or you've been talking a lot here. You want to break, and I'll kind of kick us off on opening thoughts and what we thought here.
Yeah, you kick us off, man. I need a break.
All right, everybody, go ahead and pull up a chair.
Uncle Albie.
Okay, so honestly, all right. So I really thought this in just kind of going through my final note prep this evening. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this was the best Bad Batch episode that we've had. And I know that probably bothers some folks because, again, the argument always comes up. Well, how can it be the best Bad Batch episode when not everybody was in the Bad Batch? And the way I would justify that, or at least, defend that comment, justify it, is this episode spoke to the humanity of the clones in a way that only a few other episodes ever have. And this carries back over into the Clone Wars, right? So on the theme alone, like that for me was enough. I mean, it harkens back to the very first episode where Yoda is sitting down with the clones and talking about their value, right? And how they were valued by the Force. We flash forward X amount of years now to this episode, and we're seeing the complete inverse of that. We're seeing the Empire who has no care for these people whatsoever, right? They are dead weight. They're used equipment, as the term was used in this episode. And so just on that, right, on the principle alone of that and the theme of that, I think that for me, this just, I don't know, it just struck me harder than most episodes, even though I know we didn't have Omega and Hunter and Wrecker and Tech and all these guys, right? I get all that. So those, I would say that. Now, second, I would say, I've got a question about where, like, the tone of this episode is so much darker than we've had in previous episodes, you know? I mean, you think about, like, we kind of go back and forth and sometimes talking about whether they should have stunned, whether they should not have stunned, did they kill, should they not have killed? In this episode, we got somebody getting shot point blank. You know, we got people just dying. We get to see the worst of the Empire, which I think is always really compelling Star Wars, right? I don't think we ever really truly understand or just appreciate from a storytelling perspective just how evil the Empire is and how evil they can be, like to what lengths they will go to just to be evil, just to be better than everybody else. And we got a lot of that in spades, which is, again, really compelling storytelling from a Star Wars perspective. The third thing, and then I'll pause because I've got other things here, but the other thing I was going to say is, like, D. Bradley Baker, I mean, just give this guy an award of some sort. I don't know what he needs, right? But give him something, because as I'm watching this episode, and it was like after third, fourth viewing, I'm thinking, holy crap, like I'm so vested in everything that's going on, from not only the direction, the writing, the dialogue, but the performances. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, it's not performances. This is one person, basically a one-man show. And I don't want to take anything away from who was the guy that played Captain Nolan, because I thought he did a fine job as well. I don't have him in the show notes here. I do somewhere, but it's not important. I'll come back to it later. Apart from that, like, this is one person doing all of these voice speaking parts. And I know we all expect it now. And again, we probably take it for granted, but just the level of drama and the intensity, the mood, everything from the way that Crosshair speaks to Mayday speaks, the way that the inflection, the tones, all of that is just from one person. And he's able to do this basically with the same freaking voice, you know? But it comes across as two very dynamic, diverse actors doing this, and that's not the case. And I think that's just, it continues to be mind-blowing, even though by now I should just expect it, given we've had, I don't even know, 20 years of the Clone Wars at this point. So, all right, so I'll pause there, but go ahead.
Yeah, what's even crazier is he's doing this, I think, live, like in one sitting. He's not recording all of one lines for one character and then bouncing to another ones. I'm pretty sure he's doing each of the voices in most cases.
Right. Most of it, if not all of it. Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
And just one. And I got to see this live at Celebration too. It's real. I mean, he does all of them and just switches on a dime to the next one. And I'm with you. I mean, how good this episode is it's so many different fronts. And it clearly comes through that D. Bradley Baker's favorite character is Crosshair. And I believe D. Bradley Baker came back and said that this was his favorite episode. And if you remember back really early on, before the season, or maybe even early on, he had said that there were some episodes and they had to involve Crosshair that were his absolute favorite and thought they were really compelling. Now, there might be more to come because it seems like there's an ocean of opportunity here with this character. But,
right.
This is definitely, I mean, he came out and said this is definitely one of those episodes. And you could see why. I mean, the journey that he's going on in general. And we talked a little bit before he came on the show, like, we don't see him very often. So when we get these opportunities to sit with him and like just see the character in general, but then like have him go through these motions, like it just has a lot more gravity to it. It just
Mhm.
has so much more to it. And the ongoing and the more overt, gosh, really subjugation of the clones in a lot of different ways. And they are like they've always been viewed a bit as assets. And now they're like being valued as assets too, like on the books. Right. I mean, it's literally like having a piece of equipment in your room. And when it's past its useful life, well, okay, we'll just ride it till it dies, kind of thing. It's that level of just of lack of caring and the empire just getting ready to do whatever it needs to and just not even phase them out, just ride them till they're gone.
Mhm.
And it's just incredible, like what they're going through. But again, I think this episode, the music on this one actually struck me a little bit because it was a nice balance. There were three kind of main tonality type of themes in the music. One, you had kind of like this Revenge of the Sith, a very classic Star Warsy type of feel to it. Another one had the really heavy Crosshair type of music, the theme.
Yeah, right.
And then the last one you really had was this. Oh gosh, now I can't remember it.
The
One
last,
second.
the last thing you liked most about the show?
Yeah, no. The last piece of music was really kind of a Clone Wars, like a traditional Clone Wars
Oh,
Bad
yeah, yeah,
Batch
for
type of
sure.
thing,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so it was just more that overarching music. But it was interesting the way that they all played together and they moved away from one another as well, which I just thought was really, really, really great. But again, the emotional depth of this episode, clearly, I think maybe not clearly, but definitely top two, if not top one for a lot of people. It's probably my top one because again, we finally get to see Crosshair make a decision,
Mhm.
and it's really interesting within the context of Mayday, why he went about doing it that way or why he made this decision now and what it was that finally pushed him over the threshold. So I'm really excited to talk about that with you tonight.
Yeah. Okay, in part 2 of my opening thoughts, a couple more things I wanna cover real quick.
Okay.
What was interesting is I went back and watched, The Solitary Clone, and that episode opens with, Rampart talking to Crosshair, and he says he was left for dead, and yet you still came back.
Right.
And he asks him why. And he says, "I'm a soldier of the Empire." And he says, "Tell me something, Crosshair. This new Empire, are we making the galaxy better?" This is now fast forwarding to the very end of where Cody's talking to Crosshair. Those two scenes like hit so hard now when you watch this, because you've got at the beginning you've got Rampart questioning, his and maybe not questioning, but almost admiring his loyalty, which is something that comes back and bites him in this episode, right? And then you've got at the
Right.
very end, you've got Cody putting the doubt, maybe putting seeding the doubt in there about are they really doing the right thing? And that line of, what makes us different than soldiers that we have to live with our consequences, right? This is exactly everything is kind of coming back in full circle to this episode. Watching those two episodes back to back is pretty powerful, and I'd recommend it to anybody that wants to get a really soak in this episode or soak in the arc that Crosshair is going through.
Well, and the really
Um,
cool
yeah,
connection with that on this episode was Mayday saying, we're good soldiers. And now I don't know if that's we are or we were, can't tell, but we're good soldiers. We followed orders. Like we did all the things that were expected of us.
right.
And yet this is how this is how we're treated. And again, it's just such a great connection back to the solitary clone. I agree.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, by Crispin Freeman is the guy that plays Lieutenant Nolan. Thought he did a pretty good job being a scumbag and
Yeah.
of the Empire. He's other. I looked at. He's got a long history of like really powerful characters, mostly in video games. But you probably know who he is if you follow the voice acting there. The other thing that I had in here just quickly was we've kind of talked about this, and maybe we'll kind of circle back on this a little bit later, maybe at the very end of the show. But Crosshair now arguably has had the most character development per minute. It's like not even close, right? Because he's not really been a huge, staple of either season 1 or 2, specifically 2. But yet we've gotten so much more from him than the other characters. And I know people are kind of harping on this right now and saying that's really not fair. Why are they doing this kind of thing? And I don't know that I don't really have a good answer for that. All I will say is that when you go back and retrospectively watch the Clone Wars as a series, or you watch Star Wars Rebels as a series, there are episodes where arguably a lot of the characters, the main characters, get these like really meaty, substantial, weighted character development episodes that feel like they're kind of sticking in the middle of the mission of the week, monster of the week. But when you look at the episode or the series as a whole, right? When you look at all 7 seasons of the Clone Wars, or you look at all 4 seasons of Star Wars Rebels, it all kind of balances out, meaning the other characters do get their moment at some point. And so, I don't know how many seasons this is going to go. I'd love for it to go 3 seasons, 4 seasons. I think that would be fair. I can't see it ending at 2, especially since we've got 4 episodes left and we're really not, wrapping up a whole lot here.
Right.
So I would say just kind of pump the brakes a little bit. Let's talk about whether or not this was, whether or not everybody's getting their fair share of character development when we get to the end of the series and look back on it holistically, because this is just par for course in terms of how Lucasfilm, Dave Filoni, George Lucas, whoever's involved in either one of those series have gone about developing the characters. We're not going to get major character development every single episode, but when we look at holistically, I think everybody does get their fair share at some point. And who knows? We might get the deepest, most profound character development episode for somebody like, I don't know, Tech or, Wrecker of all people. Although it feels like we'll never get there with him, but who knows? Maybe we get a Wrecker, like emotionally weighted episode as a result of this episode. You know what I mean? This could spring other deep, insightful character development episodes for some of the other characters later on. We just don't know. We don't have the preview of seeing in the future and knowing how many seasons we're going to go with all this. Does that make sense to you, Jonesy?
Yeah, it does. I mean, and I think it's a good point. Like, you have to sink your anchor with a couple of characters. Trying to do it across the entire team is difficult. Even when you're talking about, 20-ish episodes, 20, 25 episodes over 2 seasons, it's a lot to try to do this across, 5, 6 characters. And so I like that we have continued the Crosshair trend. I hope that this season gives us resolution for his arc in one way or the other. I hope this doesn't continue to drag out, because I would like to see this resolved and have a kind of a satisfying end to it here, right? But again, I think with the other characters, they have had their moments in various ways. Now, some of them came really early on with Wrecker, with setting up the room for Omega. Omega continues to grow and develop and evolve, right? Hunter has settled a bit, because Hunter had a huge arc up front as well. Echo and Tech have had their own, like Tech has been a very miniature arc, and Echo's is kind of developing a little outside of the team, but everyone has had a little bit of something, which I'm glad that they've all had. The only one we really had is Sid. Well, yeah, that doesn't really count with Sid.
Yeah.
So I get, and Miss Sunflower in the chat is, she's hoping for more with Hunter, Wrecker, Tech, and Omega as well. It seems like everybody's had compelling episodes like this, but they're all reserved for Crosshair, paraphrasing. So hopefully I got that more or less accurate. And I get that, but I think also Crosshair was the main, almost antagonist for the team that had like an emotional jab to them as well.
Right.
And it just personified the Empire taking away things like family, taking away members of your family, taking away the things that matter most to you, and not caring that they did so, right? And not always believing that these types of things have happened to you until you have to confront them and face them and go down that path. And everybody has to go in their personal journey on that space. So
yeah,
I like that. I like that we're getting all of that. I think we're getting pieces of the other ones along the way, so they're not being forgotten. Some have already had their time, but I'm hoping that we do get some resolution here with Crosshair over the next 4 episodes, so we can feel like we can move forward. And to Miss Sunflower's point, be able to develop some of the other characters and start to tell a different angle of the story that's evolving for the Bad Batch as a team.
Right. Yeah, I like that. Okay, well, let's get into our kind of a breakdown. Hopefully this doesn't go too long, because we spent much longer than I thought we would. I mean, we got, it was a good conversation, but we have a lot of at least I have a lot of show notes.
We just have to not go through scene by scene.
Okay, so here, let's start with the very first scene.
Yeah, like we always say we're not going to do, and then we end up doing it.
I know. It's my fault. You're getting the basement, basically. Okay, so we open with Crosshair. So quick question. He's standing there, he's kind of looking around. We don't really, time is kind of ambiguous for me when it comes to where he is right now. Like, I can't tell if this is running in parallel or, and maybe that's not important. I think what is important though, is you look at him. He's kind of looking around, reading the room, so to speak, right? I mean, this can't be, and I guess I want your thoughts. He's hearing this conversation of these clones talking to this officer, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. My condolences. Please, send your grievances somewhere else." But basically, they're telling him, "You're done. We're retiring you, and you're going to be on your way." Now, I do find it interesting that for some clones, they're getting that treatment, and then some other clones are getting this treatment, which is what's happening with Mayday and his folks. Totally different, right? So I don't understand what the distinguishing factor is in one way or the other. But the point is, as he's looking around, like, how much do you think it's sunk in at this point that his time is just running out, that he really is a liability. He is not looked upon as, or do you? Like, do you think he's looking around thinking, I'm different, or I'm better than this, or I'm not them? Or do you think he sees the writing on the wall that it's almost inevitable? It's just inevitable at some point he is going to be that person being walked out. And so he's doing whatever he can just to continue to be a soldier.
I think one thing to keep in perspective is that the Bad Batch they've always viewed themselves as different. So they probably have a bit more high tolerance for being treated differently than even the Regs, right? Because that's just how they've always been positioned. That's how they've separated themselves as more of a superiority complex as well in some ways. But I think the body language is what's really telling here. Is the look on his face. It almost looked like he was slumped forward a little bit, like a little bit, just not dejected, but clearly something sapping that energy from him. He's not standing at attention. He's a little more, cockeyed in his stance. And maybe I'm just looking way too far into this, but it just seemed like there were things that he's observing that you're right. Things are starting to sink in for him to where he's been able to put the blinders on before. If I'm just a good soldier, if I do what I'm supposed to do and I do it well, there's a place for me. There's a home for me here. I will do my job and I'll do it to the end. And now he's starting to see, it's changed. It's not the same. And like you said, there's this really wild inconsistency with how clones are treated. Sometimes they're being, gifted off into the sunset, at least that's the perception, while others get totally crapped all over by an inferior officer, someone with no experience apparently.
Mhm.
And so you see these wild trends and trying to make sense of all of that and where you fit has just got to be so difficult and challenging and just confusing for a team that's had so much autonomy too for however many years they've been in existence, call it
Mhm.
5 or 7 years or whatever, but to all of a sudden not have that certainty. And even when you feel like you're different and potentially better, not being able to excel at that. And now you're given these menial tasks that he's been somewhat tasked with, not all of them, but a few of them.
Yeah.
It just makes you wonder. It has to make him wonder, like, what is it? What is left for me? But again, when all else fails, you go back to your tried and true mantra, right? Good soldiers follow orders. And so that's
Mhm.
what he keeps doing. That's why he keeps showing up until, something really dramatic happens.
Yeah, and it's, you brought up a good point there because you think about it, three three things that the clones have always had, and there's more than this, right? But you mentioned autonomy for sure. I think there's a level of respect that they've earned over the years with the galaxy at large.
And that was heavily leaned on this episode, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And then the third thing is their identity. And when you look at what's happening, right, the Empire is systematically going through and stripping them of their autonomy. It's stripping them of their responsibility and it's stripping them of their identity. We saw that many, many times in this episode. And we continue to see that in this season where it is, the officer that walks up and says, "You're out of uniform," because he doesn't have his helmet on. They refuse to call each other, by their names. They call them by their CT numbers. There's a great scene I want to talk about a little bit later with Mayday. I don't know if you kind of catch them weighing each other out, right? On how are you going
Right.
to talk to me? Who are you going to refer me as? But these all three things are being removed, stripped of them, and we're seeing this. I mean, we see it in the Mandalorian. This is the MO of the Empire, right? Strip everybody of everything down to nothing, and so that they are the only thing that exists, and everyone relies on them, right? That's kind of what they want. That pure
Right.
control mechanism is in full effect there.
Right.
Okay, so the only other thing I would say is that if you watch that scene again at the very end, did you notice he locks eyes on that last clone as they're walking by? Like they just kind of stare at each other. And when he looks away, that's when I thought, oh, I wonder if he's kind of gotten the message. Maybe he still thinks he's above it all, and maybe he'll be the last to go. But you got to feel like it's starting to sink in, right? I mean,
Maybe it's really hard with the regs because they always exchange looks, and usually there's a grimace or a bit of a glare that's
mhm,
followed. And I'm pretty sure I think I remember the reg giving him a bit of a sidelong look as well.
yeah. All
And
right,
to
he could have
where,
been looking at him going like, oh, that's one of those. I've heard about you guys, you know?
yeah, and I think there's all, yeah, again, it may have been like, well, why is, because they were arguing, right? They were arguing that, what are they supposed to do? This is kind of the tried and true, the original clone reaction that we got from a previous episode, right? Well, what am I supposed to do? This is my life,
Right, right.
and there probably some resentment of like, well, yeah, Clone Force 99, as usual, different. They get to stay, just another reason to hate him, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, Nolan shows up, immediately makes that comment about his uniform, again, stripping him of his identity. not going to refer to him as anybody else but CT, whatever is
9904. Yeah, I'm surprised they're actually still allowing him to keep his armor, but I guess that's for visual purposes.
Yeah. It helps us as the audience to kind of know who they are.
Oh, absolutely.
I did not, as a quick aside, the backs of the stormtroopers is just finally sinking in for me. I don't know why. I may be dumb, but the back of the clones, even though the armor looks almost exactly the same all the way around, the backs look completely different now.
Yeah.
Is that something new, or am I just dumb?
I don't know if it's new.
Okay, so dumb. Thank you, Jonesy. All right, we'll move on. I did like that Nolan was talking about, he was like, more clones. Like, he's so, like, over them. This is where he does that used equipment, which I thought was...
That was harsh.
It was awesome. I mean, awesome in a terrible effing way, right? I mean, he's a jerk for saying that. But, man, you talk about something that hits hard. I don't know. I mean, that was enough. I mean, all these things are just kind of like... Every one of these little things is chipping away at Crosshair, right? And so that by the time we get to the very end, it's a no-brainer that he's going to kill him. And the writing's on the wall throughout this episode.
No, and I think you need that too for Crosshair as well, because something really dramatic has got to push him over that line.
Yeah.
Chipping away is one thing, but there has to be something really dramatic that puts him over the line to where he would actually react in a way, and not really with a lot of, maybe I was about to say without a lot of thinking, but that's probably not completely accurate. But it just has to be something that it's just the last straw. There's just too many of these things. They're not necessarily small, but him just being so overt with his disdain and his casually dismissing, like he actually equated them to used equipment, and they're protecting new equipment, the inanimate objects, for a different arm. I mean, the irony is not lost on anyone, of course, right?
Sure.
But and then discarding them like that used equipment as well, and talking about usefulness later on, and you're expendable and your life is over. I mean, all of those things throughout this episode, Nolan is just the personification of it, of how hard the Empire is trying to get rid of the clones and how little they care, and that they will do practically anything aside from literally just putting them in a chamber and getting rid of them at once. That dramatic. And that doesn't seem like a far-fetched solution at some point.
Right.
But I guess they have some limited amount of value, at least for a little while longer.
Yeah. And we'll kind of jump over to the Outpost now. I mean, we get the mission is such that they have to go out there, and they want him to go out there because there's raiders that are taking equipment, and they need to go out and figure out, he's got to help stop them, right? Essentially, that's the mission, right?
Well, they're going to pick the armor up and relocate it, I think, or the crates. I think that was more or less to get the crates. It seems like this was a landing zone or a staging area or something like that.
Yeah.
And they're there to remove them all rather than reinforce the camp or anything like that, I think.
Right. So we get out to the camp, and again, so we talked about this. I think it was during the season. I want to say it was at the very beginning, and probably during the solitary clone episode. But I think we had suspected that there are probably a couple different ways they're dealing with the clones, right? Everything from, like you said, putting them in chambers to just giving them their papers and sending them on their way, which eventually is going to lead them to just hanging out in the streets because they have no skills to do anything, right? Fast forward to Obi-Wan Kenobi and that poor clone that's out there as a bum. And then we've got this, which I think is probably, I think we call this, that they're probably sending out clones to do these really meaningless, trivial, high stakes, kind of like high risk type situations. And high risk, that's not even really this situation. This is just the crap job that nobody wants. Like, I don't even understand why this is even happening. I've got questions about whether or not and this sounds very cynical and probably, super conspiracy theory, but I mean, I wouldn't put it past the Empire to
a conspiracy theory. No,
I wouldn't put it past the Empire to just like make this up, right? Oh, we've got to put out these over here and then just put a bunch of clones out there and we'll sit on this. Because I mean, if you think about it logistically, why would they sit on equipment for a year? It's just been sitting there. Like, it just seems like the worst job that has no purpose, no meaning, but it's a way to get, I don't know, a squad of clones out of here, put them, and if they live, great. If they die, even better. Let's not give them equipment. We don't need to worry about giving them the bare minimum. They feel like they're doing their job, but really they're just dying out here until we need this equipment. Like, I can see that as a complete reality that the Empire is doing for these guys.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they've brought the war of attrition, but the antagonizing party is the Empire, right? They're the ones who bring the war to the clones, and the clones just don't know they're fighting it. at this point, or at least not all of them have admitted to it. But you're right. I mean, it's basically a meaningless job of saying, we'll sit on this equipment until we're ready to go get it. Whenever that is, we're stockpiling, staging it, whatever it might be. But hey, yeah, we've got a squad of clones. Just leave them out there. We won't worry about resupplying them. Yeah, they'll protect it. They're dumb. They'll do whatever we tell them to do anyway. They'll lay their lives down. And when we get out there, but then we'll figure it out when we get there. I mean, that's basically it. And that's what they're doing, and that's what they're told to do. And they have played their role admirably in that regard. As sad as it is, but it's just, they were set up to be this thing, and then they've done it well, and they've played their part in the Empire's game of dwindling down the clones in a more natural fashion, right?
Mm-hmm. So that segues into kind of meeting Mayday, and just quickly, Nolan. I think they kind of establish this when they're flying in the shuttle. There, he's kind of it seems like this is his first mission, and sure enough, we get confirmation that a little bit later.
The grabbing of the straps and stuff.
Yeah, not really used to G's and free falling like that. So we get introduced to Mayday, who I think is an amazing character. I mean, again, another character that we get to see for one episode, and there's been a lot of these clones, honestly, and they seem to be all clones, but credit to D. Bradley Baker for bringing this character to life in the way he did, and then credit to the writing team. By the way, I didn't really talk about that, just anybody's kind of keeping track. So Jennifer Corbett was the one that wrote this. She's been around forever. Rebels, a ton of Bad Batch episodes. And then Nathaniel Villanueva and Brad Rao were the directors. And then this is all still Matt Micknovitz's story. So there's nothing different here in terms of these are all the same people that keep coming up in these episodes. So it's the same writing creative team behind all of it. But I did enjoy just the dialogue, especially from Mayday, right? Just how he talks, just very naturally, off the cuff, very grounded, straight shooter in terms of what he's looking for. And then I like how he plays with Crosshair a little bit later, but we'll get back to that here in just a second. But I really enjoyed, Mayday's character and just how, you can feel for him that he has been out here on an island, essentially. Dale put a desolate chunk of ice is essentially what that is, right? There's nothing else out here. Imagine being out on Hoth and living your year out there and not getting any kind of support.
While your brothers are picked off systematically,
systematically dying, right? No support whatsoever coming from there. No reinforcements are coming. And then when they do tell you that they're coming with reinforcements, this is 36 days later, which is how he kind of opens up against Lieutenant Nolan, saying, what took you so long? And of course, to Nolan, it's how dare you question, what the Empire does? We're on our schedule, not on your schedule.
Well, and I believe in the naval ranks, lieutenant is not a super, the commander is the superior to the lieutenant.
No, that's the case in Star Wars.
Yeah. So I mean, Mayday is actually his. So Mayday is his superior, but because he is a clone,
right?
You are your rank doesn't actually mean anything, and it's clear who's in charge here. And Mayday just kind of appeases him. He just lets it go, and ribs him a little bit in the process. I like that he just has a don't care who you are, what you think. You guys have royally stuck it to us, so enjoy your time here on the Outpost.
Yeah, and this is all, again, when we talked at the very beginning about the three things being stripped away, respect being one of them, it's pretty clear that we're seeing this now, right? That he feels it too. They put us on this rock. They don't care about us. That's all disrespect for the clones.
Well, I love that we get the line back too. Nolan wants respect, but Mayday comes back with, in his experience, respect is something to be earned, which I believe we've heard at least once or twice before in both Clone Wars and in a Bad Batch. So it's great that theme came back up, and it was just dripping with just satire as well, and a bit of irony.
Well, and it goes back to, what was it, the first episode or the Clone Wars movie when Ahsoka meets Rex, right? And he's talking about how in my book, experience outranks
rank.
But I mean, essentially the same thing, right? I mean, it's all about experience. But I mean, that's kind of where or how the clones were so successful. They had a lot of experience, and so it's just not being utilized. The Empire just doesn't care about it. They could care less about it. So it all kind of comes back and circles around here.
They probably care in some areas, but they certainly don't care when it comes to a clone.
Yes, right. There's no weight. It has no value to them.
Well, and we see this time and time again with, it's just a power grab constantly. So when you're a higher rank, as you elevate through the ranks, it's purely for power. And it has nothing to do with respect or earning it or anything else. Usually it's how ruthless you've been. And we've seen a lot of examples of this too.
Yeah. We get introduced to Hex and Veach, I guess,
Right.
are the last two clones. So just the three of them essentially on this outpost. There's some sarcasm in there where he says, I feel safer already, right? As he's talking to Nolan. And then we get that kind of moment at first here with like Mayhem, with Mayday and
Right.
Crosshair talking. And this is where I said, where was it? He tells him, like, I think where he asks what his name is. And if you look at Mayday, he kind of looks up and he's waiting to see
Right.
how Crosshair responds and whether or not he's going to say, I'm CT, whatever, whatever, and rather than, I'm Crosshair. And if you look at Crosshair, he's kind of waiting to play. I mean, they're kind of feeling each other out of like, okay, where are you, in terms of allegiance? Are you one of these new age clones that are falling in line with we only refer to each other as CT something? Or are you part of the old crew, right? The old respect crew where we kind of call each other by our human names. And
Interesting.
yeah, but he's kind of looking up and he's looking at Crosshair, and finally Crosshair pauses and finally says Crosshair. And then he's like, oh, okay, then everything's fine. Like I kind of felt you out. I know exactly, who you are.
I viewed that scene totally different. Like, so I saw it as, Mayday just casually conversation with another clone and ask him. And when he didn't get the response right away, he's like, hello? And I think with Crosshair, I don't think Crosshair's been asked his name in a while. And so I'm wondering if Crosshair, not that he didn't remember his name, but I'm wondering if he wasn't sure how to respond.
Well,
And he's not exactly open either, right?
Yeah.
And he's been addressed, like you said, he's been addressed CT9904 over and over and over. But I think it's been a while since someone has just asked him his name and he responded. And maybe a little different take on what you had. It's just more of a hesitation to make a connection with somebody else than anything else. Like, do I want, this is opening up for me. This is a really big moment for me to say my name to someone, much less be another half brother of sorts, right?
Yeah. I can see it both ways, honestly.
Yeah.
But I did like he's talking about how I just got lucky here. There's a nice little icebreaker about like, oh, how did you get stuck with these? Like, I guess I'm just lucky, which I thought.
How long have you known the lieutenant? About 2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours too long.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in the background, you can see all the empty helmets too. I mean, they come back to this later and they kind of hit it a little bit harder.
Yeah, they pull back and pan a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, there's just lined up. So who knows how many folks he lost total or how many people were there originally.
Well, and in the state of their equipment, I mean, there's their armor and their gear, right? He's got it bandaged up. I mean, it looks like Dengar of all things, right?
Yeah.
It's just bandaged up. And I didn't know if this was to keep it together or if it was just to try to seal, some of the components or something because of the harsh conditions, or probably a little of both.
Yeah.
And just, again, resourcefulness of the clones to just try to survive and make do with what they've got.
Right. Which we see later with, disarming the landmine. But yeah,
Right.
I kind of read it as, he'd been complaining that they don't even have the right gear to be out in the snow. And so, yeah, I mean, they're probably just taking bandages or whatever else they can do to kind of stuff the cracks so they can actually go out there and be effective for, longer periods of time. I mean, that makes sense. They've been there a year. Their sensors are on the fritz, so nobody's coming and doing some like the basic minor repairs. So that just opens them up for even more, raids by these raiders. So,
Yeah, boulder raids too. Yeah.
right. So the issue compounds itself over time. On top of that, they've asked for reinforcements. They've asked for new equipment. They don't even know what they're protecting. This is the most like vile thing about all of this is that they are just, again, good soldiers following orders, protecting what was told to them to be of value and of importance. And you would like to think that, at least I would think that initially, maybe even till the very end, they were protecting something that was of value to them. And I think that's why it was so shocking and so surprising. And it just hits you it's like a gut punch to your stomach when you realize that this stuff is the stormtrooper stuff they're protecting. They're not even protecting anything that would ever go to them, right? I think that is probably the most vile thing about all of this stuff. And so that's why I really question about whether or not this was some kind of a, planned way of getting rid of it, almost like the prisoners on Andor, right? They don't know what they're doing and they don't know what they're making, but they feel like it's important because they have to. Otherwise, they'd go crazy doing this all day long.
Exactly. Yeah. Was it planned? Maybe not, but was it opportunistic? Absolutely. At the very least.
Mm-hmm. We missed I think this is either the first or second time that we get the ice vulture, kind of circling around.
Right.
I didn't realize it was an ice vulture until I listened to the audio descriptions. I don't think they ever say it. They just talk about their vicious creatures. He says they're vicious creatures but you have to admire them. They find a way to survive. I think this in itself, like this is so an analogy of Crosshair. Maybe the Bad Batch, you could make that argument for anybody that's against the Empire at this point that was a clone.
Clones in general, yeah.
But clones in general. But this is not I have something here. I have a visual. It's not my credit. I found this literally just like about 30 minutes before we came on air. And I want to share this because I thought this was amazing. And I didn't catch it at first. And I went back and watched it. Let me show that here. Pull this up. So somebody did this, talking about the visuals of this episode. And if you look at the bottom, I've got an image right now. It shows, this is the very end. So spoiler, but this is Crosshair right after he shoots Nolan. And if you look at him, he's standing there in the middle, and off to his left and right over his shoulders are these little gray mountains. And if you look at the visual of the vulture that's flying over around that same time, the shadow is exactly the same thing here. And so, I mean, I'm not sure if this is exactly them putting a point on this and saying that, he is this, but that's how I read it even before seeing the images. Again, I would agree. It could be the clones. It could be it could be a symbolism for a lot of different things. But in this episode, especially in that moment, that was the vulture. That was him trying to do whatever he felt like he needed to do to survive. More on that a little bit later. But I just thought that was pretty amazing that if they really went through the trouble of doing that, this visually for the episode.
I think that was pretty intentional because that's visually striking, and they definitely do look like wings around Crosshair. And again, Ice Vulture or Dark Angel, there could be a lot of interpretations,
pick, right?
Too. Yeah.
So good stuff there. Again, I wish I could give somebody credit too. There was no name attached to it, so not mine. But yeah, this will come up. We'll talk about the Ice Vultures here a little bit later. Then we get the invaders, right? So the first invasion of the Raiders coming in, they split up, and there's this whole kind of, coincidental, appropriate thing that happens with Crosshair. Like Crosshair, like there were people going, why would he, how come when the explosion went off, it like blinded him, and why did he go through that? And I've seen all kinds of theories of like, oh, it's his chip again, and making him super sensitive. And I'm like, no, it's honestly, they did that so that there would be a trail of blood, right? He couldn't kill him because then there would be no way to trace them back unless they followed tracks, and that gets kind of messy, right? But you can't think of a better way than following a blood trail. And to follow a blood trail means Crosshair would have to miss, and that's not something he would normally do. But if there was an explosion that caused him to have his vision kind of impaired a little bit, so he wasn't able to get the kill shot, now we have a very convenient plot hole here, not plot hole, but a plot armor, right, for him to be able to trace back that raider.
Or was it intentional? I mean, technically Crosshair didn't miss, right?
He didn't miss.
No, right? He didn't miss technically. So
he didn't miss technically.
He still hit the target. Yeah. I like the idea. Well, either works for me. I don't really care one way or the
other. That's a good, right. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I mean, because I like the idea of being able to, it makes sense to wound them and to track them back to where they're coming from too, because they keep getting hit. So why not just cut the head off the snake, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it just makes a sense. But no, I like this though. And the blood again gives us like the most striking visual of how good the animation is in this. So like when they get to the cave, the snow with the blood on the ice and all of that just looked super hyper realistic. It was really incredible.
Hey, so Jennifer, and I don't know if that's intentional, BFFFSFGBBBVG says the vulture is a symbol of rebirth or different perspective. I hold that thought because I would agree. And there's something that's very closely related to this later on, image-wise, that I think kind of speaks to this. I think there has been a rebirth of Crosshair.
Well,
I know.
Going to be multiple rebirths in this episode, it looks like.
That's true, too. So
I like that. I mean, that is absolutely accurate, though. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Right. Okay, so they're able to track the blood, which is, at the end of the day, that's really what's important. They get down into the caves, they realize there's more blood. Finally, Mayday shows up, right? And they kind of head into the cave. Or actually, this is when they go back. I'm sorry. They go back because during that explosion, there were his last two clones died. And there was a great little moment there. Like, I thought they were going to go through this whole kind of ceremony thing. We were going to get some really, deep, swelling story from Mayday about how those were his last two soldiers. And I would think that's probably where it was going until Nolan walks in and is like, what are you doing? Get back to work, right? He's like the boss that is, watching the time clock and why are these guys not doing their job? But what a jerk move again on his part.
I mean, it's consistency too, right? Even at the very end of the episode. So you failed. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
as they're laying there dead, bleeding out, if you will.
right, exactly.
And again, there were 6 helmets there. He added the 2, but if you look in the background, there's a ton of helmets there.
Yeah, there were
Um,
probably 20 plus at least. Yeah.
I enjoy the way that Mayday doesn't even acknowledge him. Like when Nolan walks in and is talking to him, he never moves his focus from the helmets, right? So he's like
Right.
so above all that. Like he doesn't even want to acknowledge the fact that he's there barking these orders at him, right?
Exactly. I mean, it just, you talk about earning respect. This is the same guy that just wants to waltz in here and tell them what to do. And he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, sure, whatever. You tell us what to do, we'll do our job, but I'm not gonna give you any kind of credibility or legitimacy here.
Yeah. And so we get this, we get the good soldiers don't always follow orders at this point, right? He pushes back and says, look, I'm not going back out there. After he tells them to get back out there, he's like, we have no men. We don't have the equipment to get out there. This is not worth just a few crates, which fires off Nolan to come back and saying it's not your job to determine what the Empire, what's of value to the Empire, which is so symbolic and parallel to exactly what we've talked about earlier, which is the clones, right?
Right.
It's echoing the Empire's views on the clones themselves. They don't value them. They're not important.
It was almost verbatim like Pong Crow.
Exactly. Yes. Our buddy Pong Crow, who seems to be coming up a lot, but I guess it's because he is,
We like him. Yeah.
Well, that, yeah. And the fact that he was, again, so he was kind of siding with the Empire. He kind of saw their ways and, all that, but
yeah. Well, he was
makes
that
sense.
that hard ass uncaring. Doesn't matter what you say. My way is the only way, which is
Right.
very synonymous with the Empire.
And in some regards, like Nolan's not wrong. I don't agree with it. Like, I mean, it's terrible, but he's not wrong. I mean, if they really truly are soldiers, as Crosshair believes them to be.
Well, for
they
subordinate
would-
officer, he's wrong, but yes.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, they should just be following orders, right? But yeah, the analogy isn't lost here that, that the clones themselves are no longer of value here.
Right.
And then Mayday kind of pushes him and says they have to, and he puts it on Crosshair Nolan to say, he puts it on Crosshair and Mayday saying, look, it's your job. I don't care if there's 2 of you or 20 of you. I don't care what the conditions are. I don't care if you don't have the equipment. Your job as soldiers is to get out there and get this equipment back. And so he puts on 2 people to go out and figure all this out, which again is just another, stab, I think, into Crosshair's back. Cause I think he realizes like, there's no way. Like, I mean, yeah, he's capable of a lot, but this isn't a 2-man job, right? I mean, this is much larger than that. And so I think he's starting to really, I mean, he already has at this point, but it's more armor for him or more ammunition for him, no pun intended, for him to kind of take the actions that he does a little bit later in the show.
Right.
Okay, so they head back to the trail. They go into the caves. They notice that these guys are wearing the armor, right? So like the Raiders are, wearing their own clone troopers armor.
Yeah, not the crate armor, but yeah, the clone trooper armor. Right.
Well, I got a question about that. So, in this, maybe it speaks to the conspiracy again that I have. Hey, maybe I am on this conspiracy theory thing. But why wouldn't they wear
your thing? Yeah.
But why wouldn't they have worn like the stormtrooper equipment if that was like, rated for colder weather conditions or better armor? Then why wouldn't they wear that versus throwing on the clone stuff? Unless this has all been part of the conspiracy, and the Empire said, after you kill these clones, put on their stuff so they can see it, because we really want to stick it to them.
Like Pong Crow.
Like Pong Crow.
I don't think they actually got into the crates yet. I'm trying to remember if they actually saw them into the crates, because the only reason why it was all over the place was because it exploded and got knocked open. But honestly,
I thought they had been doing that. They'd been raiding. Maybe they were raiding other things. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe they have, you're right. But I think we also know the stormtrooper armor is crap. I mean, in a nutshell, it's cheaper and it doesn't hold as, I mean, there's a lot of books and things that cover all of this now. How much of it is legends and how much of it is canon now? I can't keep track of all of that, but generally speaking, it's not as high quality as the clone armor. That's historically what's been the story of it. So even if they got it and they saw it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's any better than what they had now. It's probably better than the state of disrepair that the clone trooper armor was, but at the same time, largely still probably useless in these extreme conditions.
Yeah. So it's
you've been called out, by the way. Yes.
Yeah, I see that. I love how shocked Albert seems about realizing that he has a lot of conspiracy theories.
It's like you've never listened to the show before. Yeah.
I've actually never listened to the show
or participated in it.
or I've never participated, arguably, from some folks. So, so the okay, so no, back on track here. So Crosshair, or was it Mayday now? One of them says something profound, right? This is the whole discussion about how he didn't want to bring back dead weight, right? Mayday's upset because these raiders left their own behind. And for him as a clone, that, I mean, just never would have happened, right? They always go back for their own. They've proven this time and time again in the Clone Wars and Rebels even. They don't leave anybody behind. And so, but for Crosshair, he's like, well, no, it's dead weight. Like, what's the point? And then we get this whole kind of thing about, remind me never to die in front of you or whatever it is. All of this comes back. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, remind me not to die on your watch.
Right.
And this is while he's trying. This is while he's trying to help him out, right? He's stepped on the pressure mine.
Yeah. Was this the pressure mine point, or was this a little bit later? I thought it was later. No, this is just before the pressure mine. Because later on, when they get to the pressure mine, he brings it up. He's like, a Mayday. This is where I think he's really having fun with Crosshair's predicament. He says, so what was that you were saying about dead weight?
That's right. Yeah.
You're going to be dead weight here if you don't, unless you have me help you out.
And it was so great. Like when he tries to lift his foot, whoa, wait till I'm around the corner.
Right.
Like, you have great confidence in your work. I do. I'm just not stupid.
I'm not stupid. It's like, so again, this is where I was talking about earlier. Like the writing is so perfect. Like it's so good in this episode. It's so grounded in it's relatable in a lot of ways. Oddly, not that I've been around trip mines or stepped on them, but I work with stupid people. So yeah, he says
clearly don't watch the show.
They don't watch the show, or some do actually, and that's fine. I'm not talking about you. Okay, so he does step on the pressure mine. This is a great moment. Mayday says, "Oh, I'll try to disarm it. I think they all should be the same, but maybe they're not." Kind of thing. It's like he's doing nothing to ease Crosshair's mind here, but at the same time, he's kind of like Crosshair's earned this, right? I mean, he's said enough and done enough that in Mayday's mind, yeah, they're brothers, and yeah, he doesn't really mean this stuff, but he knows he's got the advantage here, right? He has the high ground in some regards, as if you will.
Yeah, I don't even have a clever pun for this one.
Yeah. Let's see. He says, what were some of the other things he said? They look different. I'm sure they're all the same. He's like, guess we'll find out soon enough, whether this thing blows up. But then he goes into the whole ideal of talking about wanting to know who he was. They get into discussion about Clone Force 99. Do you think, like, how widely known? I think we've talked about this, but it does feel like Clone Force 99 at first seemed to be like this myth kind of thing, right? And now it feels like a lot of clones were aware that they were out there, that they actually existed in some way, even if they maybe never worked with them or teamed up with them, but they are out there. But I got the sense that he knew of who Clone Force 99, because he didn't really bat an eye, when he said that.
Actually, I viewed it the other way. I viewed that he likely didn't really know who they were, or maybe just didn't care, or maybe just didn't react anyway because it didn't matter, in that moment. But it seems like he would have, like, Crosshair stands out. And so it seems like he would have been able to put that together, that they were a little bit different. But again, there were so many variations and they've been disconnected for a long time, so it may not have mattered. But it was really profound, though, that Crosshair probably hasn't been, like before with his name, it probably hasn't been asked this question in a long time. If maybe, well, maybe never. I don't know if he's ever been asked what his squad is, because most people may have just seen them and knew them as a crew. Yeah. And when you see all these guys walking, you probably have a much clearer indication. And again, you see a sniper in all black, and maybe you don't think as much about it. But, clearly Clone Force 99 doesn't mean something to everybody, I guess. But also the more important though part was that he hesitated when his response, like when he asked, well, what happened to him? And he says that they're gone. And it's a bit of a hasty thing. And to his credit, Mayday didn't really press it or push it at all, because what are you going to do? We're all dealing with loss. We all have we all have a similar story. Clearly he's lost everybody,
right?
By this point at his outpost. So I think it was the first time that Crosshair actually had to admit that he is without a squad. He's lonely without his squad. And maybe the first time in a while, maybe not the first time overall, but definitely the first time in a while. And I like that we had that moment where he's just, you don't quite know, like you could almost hear the gears turning in his head and the conflict and everything else, but it just won't come out of him. It's just not his nature to make any kind of verbal commentary around any of it. And Mayday just gave him an out, so we didn't really have to in this case.
How much of Crosshair saying they're gone or whatever it was, I forget the exact words. Basically, they're dead.
Yeah.
Is he protecting them in any way? Is he still trying to like keep this front up that they died during, the bombing, the sacking of Camino?
Man, I thought about this a lot because I wondered if the way he answered, if it was because he was trying to save face that they're traitors to the Empire and just doesn't want to say it out loud to anybody, because maybe it is a bit of protecting. Maybe it would indict them of saying that, or maybe he feels like it might indict himself in one of his peers who's clearly an Imperial loyalist, at least on the record, right? Even though clearly has a lot of questions, and just I think for Crosshair, just not willing to cross that line of so to speak, of just not wanting to figure out how other people view it, because he got close enough with Cody, and he was able to step back from that line and kind of avoid having to make a decision there. I think given the circumstances of what they're in, if he were to say they were, they're deserters, they left, they bailed, they left me. And then if he were to like, you know what, I've thought about it a lot myself. And then these guys are in this quiet environment, just the two of them on this mission, a lot of opportunity to talk. And Crosshair terrified to death of that conversation, because what if someone else says something that he feels like he has to go and put them down, and it's getting harder and harder for him to pull that trigger when the time comes.
I can see it both ways, honestly. Like he's protecting him, or he's just trying to like make menial talk, or just doesn't really want to open that bridge. I mean, he's got his foot on a pressure plate, and the thing could go off at any second, right? So we kind of can't read too much into his answers here, but nonetheless, I mean, it's enough for Mayday to kind of bring into go into that next part of like, oh, well, we're survivors, and yet, here we are, the best that the Grand Republic had to offer, and yet we're here babysitting this equipment, so many later. And this again speaks to how does the Empire value? They don't value the clones, and so this is why they have these crap jobs. And on top of that, they're having to use makeshift equipment and methods to disarm bombs because they haven't been providing all that, which then finally lends into that whole bit about, oh, I'm confident, I'm just not stupid, right? Because I mean, it makes sense that he would think that, but it is, for Crosshair, it's like a mission is a mission. Like he's still trying to walk the line, you know what I mean? And say all the right things. Good soldiers follow orders. A mission's a mission. And it's like people like Mayday are so beyond this. Like that's not who we are, dude. Like that was the Grand Army, right? This is not the Grand Army. This is the Empire. You're living in a dream if you think that's the case.
Well, he's so casually able to dismiss a lot of it without directly contradicting what Crosshair is saying. It's like he doesn't even have to say you're wrong. He just says something or has a retort for it in a very indirect way that completely nullifies whatever Crosshair's opinion is on it, because he knows it's fluff and is garbage, right?
Right.
And I think this is and that's why Crosshair, I think, is afraid to have any further conversation about his future in the Empire and about what his squad has gone and done by leaving the Empire and being traitors. Because I think he's just terrified of actually having to make a decision in any of that.
Yeah. All right, well, they move on. Thankfully, he's able to disarm that. They move on to find the Raiders' encampment, or the cave that they've been hiding in. We get a great action sequence. Again, we don't really break down the action sequences, but there was one moment in there where I guess Mayday was about to get overwhelmed by 3 of the Raiders. And of course, Crosshair was quick enough to kind of dispatch all 3 of them. And we had a mix of, stun grenades and point blank shots to the head. And I mean, so it was, again, going back to whether this is kid show, is the violence appropriate? Is it too much? Is it not enough? Everybody should have been happy in this episode, because I think we got everything you could possibly want, short of like stun bolts, but otherwise everything was kind of here. And then, there's Crosshair shoots all of these landmines, which of course, takes out the rest of the Raiders, because they just kept coming out. I mean, they were like pouring out of this tunnel. Who knows how many of these guys were there?
It was a desperation shot, because clearly they didn't want to destroy the equipment.
Right.
But it was a desperation shot. That's why they used the stun grenade in the first place.
Yeah. I skipped over it, but there was that one skiff that kind of, gets away until Crosshair turns around, shoots it. And so that was going to be potentially their way back home. And it had some of the crates on there. Well, of course, until the avalanche. But that explosion causes the cave-in, which then, causes the subsequent avalanche. And as they're kind of running away from the avalanche, Mayday, who essentially saves Crosshair's life by kind of throwing him off to the side so he doesn't take the brunt of, I think he was sheltered. The way I kind of envisioned it was Crosshair was protected by that outcropping rock a little bit, right? He didn't take the full-on avalanche, even though they were both completely covered. I think Mayday took the brunt of it, which is what led them to.
I think he was pushing Crosshair out of the way because the force of the avalanche ran Mayday into the rock.
Into the rock.
Yeah, that's what killed him.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's internal bleeding and everything probably killed him. But yeah,
Yeah,
so he was
yeah.
pushing him out of the way. I don't think there was any escaping the avalanche from a coverage perspective. But yeah.
Yeah, it was more, right. It was about not running into a wall, a solid wall at, 60 miles an hour, basically. Right. So yeah, and then from this point on, and this is what I want to get back to, like the rebirthing, right? Or what Jennifer was talking about, the vulture being a symbol of rebirth or different perspective. There is the shot of his arms coming out of the snow. And we saw this with Book of Boba Fett. And we talked about it then during the Book of Boba Fett about, right? I mean, it was partly, Robert Rodriguez, playing homage to who knows how many, movies like that, right? But on top of that, it was literally this character rebirthing, and at least in Book of Boba Fett. I mean, that's how I interpret it, right? He was coming out of the ground as a new person kind of thing. Or at least going down the path of a new person thing. And so when the way he comes out and as dramatic as his arms are jettisoning out of the snow like that and then pulling himself up, and then you've got the music in the background that's kind of swelling on top of all that, even though he may not be necessarily rebirthed here and coming out of this as a completely different person, I think he is by the end of this episode. I think there's no doubt in my mind that he is. Or maybe the same person. I don't know. We'll talk about that here in a second.
Emery's going to see to it that he's a different person. Yeah.
Right. She's going to do everything she can to prevent this or have him regress in some way. But this did feel like, okay, this was that, watershed pendulum moment swing, shift in character. He's going down, maybe not necessarily the old path or the right path, but he's definitely going down a different path. And so from that regard, I think it is a rebirthing of Crosshair, a new version of Crosshair or a new path for Crosshair going forward, because I mean his life was literally put at risk here, and of all people it was a clone, right, that saved him, that probably wasn't as loyal. I mean, yeah, in name he reported to the Empire, but he had his doubts, and I think he did enough to kind of chip away at Crosshair's armor and his consciousness a little bit about what it means to be a soldier and what it means to be a soldier of this Empire, right?
Right. Yeah, I think, and it was important. This is the first time that he has made a decision that didn't support the general Imperial narrative. Right. So he had to go and make a decision what was best for himself. Well, maybe not for himself, but what was best for somebody else that he was in service of. Because the easiest thing would have been for him to just get up and do what he said he was going to do and just walk away. It's a lost cause. The guy's probably dead. There's nothing I can do to save him. Even after he finds him, he still has to choose to take him with him, right? Even though he's been told to leave him. But it's not what Mayday would have done. It's not what he wanted his brothers to do. He didn't want his brothers to leave in Clone Force 99 and Omega. He didn't want them to leave either. And so he's going to finally make the decision of saying, well, I'm going to be the one that doesn't leave then. Yeah. I'm going to be the one that picks you up and takes you with me where everyone else is left. I'm going to finally make that leap of faith and see where this takes me, because it's the right thing for me to do. Mm-hmm. And it's the right thing for my brother. And it's not my half brother anymore. Now you're my full brother again.
Yeah.
Right. We're now on the same playing field. He's earned his respect. He's earned Crosshair's respect. Mayday has.
Yeah.
And so Crosshair is willing to put his own life on the line in order to, with just a chance to save him, even though he knows it's probably a long shot.
He does not look at Mayday as dead weight. And, maybe he did earlier on when they made that comment, or they just weren't there yet. Either way, he definitely doesn't look at him as such here.
Right.
And he goes so far as to, he could have easily put the helmet on himself, but he puts the helmet on Mayday. Later on, he's kind of throwing him over his shoulder. He's protecting him everywhere he can. He gives him his rifle to use as kind of a cane to help him walk. I mean, he's doing everything to keep this guy alive.
He basically hugs him, behind the rock to try to keep
to
him
keep him
warm
warm.
during the storm. Yeah.
Yep. So I mean, it's just a completely different shift for Crosshair, but it makes sense, and that's the important thing, right? This is so it's very believable, it's very understandable. It makes sense for the character, given where he was. This isn't like something new. I mean, he's had doubt. I mean, even in the one episode that we had him in earlier, there were doubts in him already when he took out she was the leader of that group that didn't want to be part of
Right.
the Senate or the
And
Empire, right?
right.
And when I guess what we speculated was when it came to the officer saying shoot her, telling Cody to do that, and then when Cody didn't do it, he was almost threatening that if he didn't, Cody would die. Crosshair stepped in and took that shot, right?
Right.
For me, that was a good indicator, at least, that Crosshair is still in there somewhere, and he was looking out for someone else. So there have been a number of things like that, of course, that have happened where this doubt is kind of seeped in, which all culminates in the final shot.
But I think this
No pun intended.
is also Crosshair on some level, still wanting to have faith that the Empire would do the right thing. All I have to do is get you back to base, and we'll be safe. We'll
That's
get you
true.
medical attention, like the same. I hesitate to use the word luxuries, but the same amenities that you've had.
Amenities.
You are still a soldier of the
Same
Empire.
respect for life. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're still a soldier of the Empire, right? You still are afforded basic medical care when you get injured because you're useful,
Mhm.
right? That's Crosshair's mentality is we're soldiers. We should be getting this medical attention so we can get healed back up and we can get back out there and do what we do best. That mentality is almost this fool's hope. And I'm not saying he was setting himself to test Nolan or anything like that because I don't think
Right,
I don't think any of that crept into his mind. It was pure survival at that point
Yeah.
and taking care of his brother. But I think it is he just expected that. And so when you get further down in the story and Nolan basically rejects them any kind of care. And now granted, it took a whole 5 seconds for Mayday to die, and I don't know that he would have actually been saved, but still they didn't even make the effort. It's just this draw of finally everything snaps clearly into focus for Crosshair, what he's had blinders on and kind of ignoring. For someone that sees so well, he has actively ignored so many things and just set them aside. And I'm with you though. I think that we've seen the wheels turning for Crosshair. We've seen the conflict. We know it's all in there, but it's finally met this breaking point where he made a decision. It was so hard for him to make the decision. And yet the same things that have been afforded them for the last however many years are all of a sudden not been there and being told I'm expendable and useless and not worth a piece of shiny plastic on another person's body that's not a clone.
Yeah.
Is just, all right, fine. You guys have been beating it into me. Let's go down this road.
Right. Well, and they exercise the vulture, right? I mean, and throughout all of this, right? These sequences of them kind of falling down and getting back up, and the vultures constantly circling around. I mean, looking for meals, but at the
Right.
same time, you think, I don't know, maybe this thing's guiding it as well. Like there's probably some symbolism there of kind of keeping him alive, right? That vulture isn't there to eat him; it just sees him as another vicious creature that'll do anything to survive, and so it's helping its own kind out in that regard. They eventually get to a point where there's those 3 shuttles that fly over their head, and they just keep zooming by. And this speaks to earlier when Crosshair's talking to Mayday about the Raiders. Like they've been gone for hours, and no one is like looking for them. And
Right.
I mean that I think that dawns on Crosshair at that point. Like these guys, I mean, he probably heard them coming and was thinking, "Oh, great, here the cavalry's here, the rescue's here," and for them just to kind of fly over, having that tells them again that they don't care about us.
They weren't
You know?
even looking. Yeah.
Right? They're not even looking. They're just doing their routine missions. So all of this really just starts to weigh. I mean, it weighed
they were
on me
just-
as a viewer.
They were just showing up to get to have more people offload the equipment is really all they were there for.
Yeah, right. So all this is just a pressure pot, right? It's a pressure cooker for him.
Yeah.
He's going to explode at some point here at the very end. Okay, so they get to the base, and Nolan is checking in all the crates and whatever. I mean, they're literally limping across this tarmac, like Band of Brothers style, bleeding, dying, and all these other clones are running out to go see them, just like, hey, look at these guys.
Those are stormtroopers.
They're stormtroopers, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, you can tell by the back. Again, at that level, they're valuing life. What did I say?
Oh, you said you could tell by the back.
Oh, yeah, right. I'm on this now. I'm on this, Jonesy. I'm not that dumb. I will pick up on this eventually.
Well, that and they said, look, and it was the old classic Stormtrooper.
Okay, well, thank you. You can call me Captain Obvious. I'll change my name here. But nonetheless, they at least run out there to go see them because, I mean, there's people dying.
to stand and watch, yeah.
Right, they work for the Empire. I mean, these are like, what else would you expect them to do? But Nolan comes in is like, no, get back to making the burgers, right? Get back on the fryer. What are you guys doing off the clock? I'm not paying you to stand around. Get back to your jobs. And never once does anybody go help them.
Right.
Like, they're close enough. I mean, they're actually pretty far away when they first show up and Nolan's standing there. But like no one goes out to help them at all, which is shame on the stormtroopers, but I'll give them a pass. But Nolan, when he doesn't do anything and just kind of stands there, like looks at them and kind of like almost disgust, right? Like,
yeah,
this is like the comment he made at the very beginning, like, oh no, clones, right? This is an extension of that comment, just in a really horrifying way.
Right. And now he doesn't have to mask it, right? Because they're both in such poor shape that he can let all that disdain just flow out of him and just drip with sarcasm. And he doesn't have to, and there's no more preamble.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, no, let me just lay it out straight for you because your clone head is too thick to actually get the message.
Yep.
Is basically what he was saying to Crosshair. You are expendable. You are worth nothing. Everything you failed your mission yet again. You came back, you brought someone dead to me. That doesn't make any sense. And you're half dead. So you're worthless.
Yeah. So his exact, and I just want to, I need to touch on this because I thought from, I guess the writing, again, going back to the writing, I thought this was like the best dialogue in this episode. But he says, about time you two returned, right? No, not like, hey, where you been? Or, hey, you guys okay? It's like, what took you so long? And then Crosshair says he needs a medic. He says, I see you didn't retrieve the crates, which means you failed your mission. Not acknowledging that the person is sitting there dead, but acknowledging the fact that they did not complete their mission. And then Crosshair says, did you hear what you said or what I said? Help him. Certainly not, is what he responds back with. That would be a waste of the Empire's resources. And like, this is, I don't know where the breaking point was, but it could have been at any one of these moments, honestly, hearing this stuff. And then he says, well, he'll die. And then, of course, Mayday, right on cue, I guess he was waiting for that, dies.
That's your sign. Do it.
Very sad. Very sad. And then he tells him he served his purpose as a soldier of the Empire.
Like that gives him some sort of badge of honor.
Right. Yeah. Right. To which Crosshair says, you could have saved him. And then this was kind of like the final one here. It says, perhaps you didn't hear me. He is expendable as you are. And if you speak to me again with such disrespect, I'll see to it that you meet a similar fate. Clone. Like makes it a point to point out that he is a clone. Again, he is expendable. He is a lesser person. He's not looked upon by the Empire favorably.
He's not even a number at that point.
Yeah, exactly. You're just a number.
No,
and again,
he's not.
That's
my point. He's not even a number.
Well, true.
You are just a lower life form.
Right. It was that moment, like I said, this is what I would say codified the fact that it's, like, for me, kind of the best episode, because that line right there is the antithesis of the Yoda episode. Right. And I didn't write that line down, what Yoda says, but basically saying that you are part of the Force. Or even though you're a clone, even though you were born in a test tube or whatever it was, you're part of the Force. You're a living being, and you should be valued, and we value as that. That's the exact opposite of what this guy said. Right. I just love that the fact that they tied that back, if that was indeed what their intent was.
Exactly. I mean, Yoda was saying, you are all unique. Let me see your faces. Tell me your names. You were all unique, mm-hmm. and you basically have a different shade of color in the Force, effectively. Right. Every one of you has something different about you, and Nolan has completely deconstructed all of that and got to its very base element that you are just a clone. Not even a human being. You're just a clone. You're just you're effectively a test tube, child. There's nothing unique or special about you.
Right.
And yeah, I'm with you. I don't know what moment in all of that was that moment for Crosshair where he's decided to just say, you know what? No, enough of this. Or if it was because he was injured and was just kind of a weakened state of mind, to where he just was exhausted and I just can't stand by this anymore. And so he was at a moment of weakness to where his emotions got the best of him, or he let his emotions come up, I guess, and couldn't suppress them as much. But I mean, take your pick. Any
Yeah,
of those,
yeah.
any moments in that, or all of them, or whatever you want to do, you have an argument for all of it. But it was finally that not only so he made multiple choices in this episode, but in this one moment, the open act of defiance, not only verbally, but then crossing that line and going to that point of no return by pulling the trigger on his commanding officer superior. I don't know what the relation is to Crosshair, but his commanding officer, and basically putting him down in cold blood. He finally did it. I don't think he anticipated surviving this experience though either. So I don't know that there
I
was,
don't think so
and I don't
either.
know that he was thinking about any of that. But I imagine he's like, well, what do I
Sure.
have to lose? I'm fading as it is, so I'm going to do one act of defiance before I go,
Yeah.
and just give into it. And maybe I don't think he expected to wake up from this though either.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that. There's nothing more dangerous than someone without anything to lose,
Right.
right? Or to live for. And essentially, at this point, I mean, he doesn't have anything. I mean, he's out on this desolate planet.
Yeah.
He's dying, right?
No family,
There's
no one around him,
no family.
no one that cares.
They've all condemned him.
Yeah.
Yep. These guys don't love him. They don't care for him. So, I mean, he's weighing his choices, I'm sure, is part of it. But at the same time, he's got, I mean, they make a point to, you can hear the vultures, you see them visually flying over. We showed the shadow, right? That would be kind of foreshadowing, that last stance or that last visual of him standing there with the two mountains behind him. On top of that, you've got Nolan saying, either which is to get back to work while you're still useful, right? Was kind of really the last line that he says until he finally gets up and turns around. He looks at Mayday one last time. Then he kind of gets up and calls him out. I love that he called him lieutenant, like almost like in his face,
right? Like spitting in his face, like it was from Mayday,
right? Exactly. And then shoots him. And then when he falls to the ground, there's almost like a moment there where he's looking around that I would describe as lucidness. Like for the first time, maybe he does see clearly now. Like, again, I think he was going in with this, like, I'm done. I'm just going to kill this dude. And this is the end of me. I don't think he was expecting to live.
I agree.
But it did almost feel like there was a moment of like lucidness there, or lucidity, or peacefulness, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But he had this look on his face like, okay, I'm done. Like, I've done the right thing now. And maybe I can make peace with that. So it's going to be interesting for me, I think, and we'll talk about this here on kind of our final thoughts about where this goes with his storyline and what we can expect from him waking up in Tantus, of all places.
Yeah.
But yeah, he falls down, screen goes black. And I thought when that screen went black, I thought they were going to cut to the credits. And I was like, please, come on, do not do that.
I thought the same thing. I was like, there's no way we can end on this. I was literally saying, I was like, there's no way we can end right here. My head's like screaming at it. And then when he starts coming I was like, oh God, thank you.
I kept looking at the time. And I was like, okay, it's because it was 4. I remember looking at it, it said 4:07.
Yeah.
And I think that's too much time. That's too much time. They can't do the credits because the credits are only 2 minutes long. So where the heck are the other 2 minutes? Right. I was like freaking out here. And thankfully they came back because I kind of would have been okay with it. Like that would have been pretty powerful and dramatic.
Right.
But I think it's just maybe not as equally dramatic or powerful, but I think it is certainly as intriguing to suddenly for him to wake up in what I'm assuming to be Tantus. I mean, Emery was there.
Yeah, he's on Tantus. Yeah.
Okay. So there's no question in my mind at this point because Jonesy confirmed it. But done. I got a lot of questions now. Like, what exactly are they wanting him to do? Like, what are they, what's his purpose of being at Tantus? Emery says that, the doctor will be there. She's talking about Dr. Hemlock, who will show up. We saw him in a couple episodes ago. This is the crazy guy that's kind of running the facility there at Tantus now. I mean, it's clear, I think, at this point that everybody's going to be heading to Tantus in some way. And so for me, that gives me hope. The rest of the clones are going to rescue him because I'd like to see him come back. He doesn't have to have a full redemption. I think there's going to be some bad blood and there's got to be a lot of stuff that's got to get discussed and hashed out. But I would like to see him rejoin now, especially where he's been kind of on this season and in this journey. Even if it's only been 2 episodes, like I said, arguably it's been pretty developmental for him. I would expect them to kind of do a rescue mission, even if that wasn't the intent. The fact that they find out, like, he's here, who's here? The princess, right? If it's that moment, then I'd be totally fine with them. And then suddenly that becomes part of the mission as well, that they got to get him out of there. Because I think that would mean a lot to somebody like, for Crosshair to go through that and feel that love, giving exactly everything that's already happened between them and certainly to himself as part of the Empire.
Well, I think, and talking about it earlier, Miss Sunflower was talking about she wants this emotional arc for the other characters. I think for Hunter, this would be a great opportunity for him and for him and Crosshair to finally reconnect and meet on a different level. I think it would be
Yeah.
really, really, really powerful. But I got to be honest with you, man. When the scene rose from black, I was relieved. I was excited. I was like, okay, cool. He's dead, or he's not dead. But then, and then my heart like quickly dropped almost immediately when I saw Emery, and with her comments about Dr. Hemlock, will be there when he gets healthy, and whatever they're going to do with him. I'm like, oh God, no. He finally got to this moment, and now we're going to strip him of all of that, and now he's going to potentially be reinforced as a bad guy and antagonized to the Bad Batch when they do show up. Because again, I'm with you. All roads lead to Tantus. Everything's gonna come here. And what are they gonna do to him? Are we really gonna make him a bad guy again and reinforce that? Or are they gonna get there sooner rather than later? I don't know. But I mean, I was like, oh gosh. I mean, my heart dropped. I was just so terrified. I'm scared for a Crosshair is kind of where it all comes to. But it also cemented a couple of things for me too. One, the final episode is called Plan 99. Plan 99 seems like an escape, right? So rescue Crosshair is kind of what I'm thinking Plan 99 actually is.
A rescue Crosshair and Omega, but go on.
Yeah, a rescue mission though of rescuing someone from the Bad Batch, I guess. That's kind of my thing. But I think the other thing that it does cement for me though, thinking back to, oh gosh, what was the episode with the Believer? Is I think we really are seeing Dark Trooper stuff right here, Phase 0. Like I really do think this pretty strongly that this is the genesis of that program in some form or fashion. Again, from the way that the armor looked, it didn't look like it wasn't a traditional helmet. It's sealed off at the neck. Now, what kind of enhancements or how far along are they in all of that process? And for those who are curious, we did a whole episode on this for our Patreon called The Believer a few episodes ago. So if you want to go check out the Patreon, it would be a really cool one to listen to and kind of our speculation about Dark Troopers and Death Troopers and a bunch of others. But Dark Trooper Phase 0 just seems like it's just so, and it connects so well with with all the other material that we have going on with Mandalorian and what we've already seen there, that I think it just makes too much sense now we know there's connectivity with Mandalorian and Skeleton Crew now. So again, that we're making those connections with Bad Batch a whole 20 plus years prior, to me just seems like it makes sense. And I just like the idea of getting a little bit more. We don't need much, but getting a little bit more in the Bad Batch from that would be I think that would be really cool. And I'm with you. If the seasons do go on, if we do get a third or a fourth or whatever season, continuing to kind of sprinkle some of that in, and this kind of be one of their things that they uncover and they give us more transparency on, and they shed this light on that aspect of the Empire. I think that would be really fun. I think that would be a really cool way of using the Bad Batch, this show, to do something unique that fills kind of a backstory of a relatively inconsequential part of the Mandalorian, right? But a really cool idea behind all of it, not just a throwaway type of story or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the quick fire round, and we've kind of talked about this already in terms of like what happens to Crosshair at this point. I'm with you. Like I think whatever they did to that Believer, they're probably going to try to do to Crosshair, because she says, what did she say? She says, cooperate and you might survive.
Yeah.
And the way I interpret that is, okay, if you're good and you don't try to do anything, we're going to put you in a better position, meaning you'll be one of these new folks. And I mean, think about it. I mean, they've got to know he's a clone or a part of Clone Force 99, a special clone.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, that's probably super intriguing for somebody like Dr. Hemlock anyways, right? Just the opportunity to have like this super soldier that's now part of this new program that, they've created here. I think that's the likelihood that that's going to happen. Now, I can't see them going through with Crosshair, so I would expect him to get away at some point. Maybe it's part of the rescue mission. I don't know, it's really hard to speculate, but the last 4 episodes we got are Pabu, which sounds more and more like, I mean, maybe it could be like a Kaminoan name. It feels like it's the name of a person. Maybe it's a place. I don't know. We'll see what happens, right? And then there's Tipping Point, which is the episode after that. And then the last 2, which is the Summit and Plan 99. I'm with you on Plan 99 being kind of like this is the rescue mission. The Summit may be the episode in which either Omega is taken there if she is captured, because they said you have to go after Omega if you want to get Nala Se to speak, right? So if they do get her hold of her, then maybe the Summit is literally the summit of Mount Tantus. That's where they're taking her, and that's how it ends. And then Plan 99 is them, rescuing her. But as far as Pabu and Tipping Point, I don't know where I don't know where that is going to have Crosshair involved, or how much he's going to be involved in either one of those. There's only 4 episodes left, though, is what I'll say. And so, given that we've got a lot of open-ended questions now with Crosshair, and we've got stuff for, Omega potentially, and Nala Se, and the cloning, and whatever they want with Nala Se, it feels like these last 4, there's no quote filler. Like, it feels like these 4 episodes are all going to be fully dedicated. And given, especially now that we're at literally the last quarter of episodes, I can't see them doing a mission of the week. Where that puts Sid at this point, I have no idea. And where this puts like Cody and Rex, I mean, maybe they'll probably get worked in, I would imagine, at this point, because they said in the Zillabees, go contact Cody, contact Rex. It'd be a shame if they didn't come back, and it may be gratuitous for them to do so, right? But I would love for them to do that. But either way, well, I guess what I'm saying, these last 4 episodes do feel like they're going to be completely hyper-focused on all the events that are happening on Tantus, and specifically around Omega and Crosshair.
Yeah, and Tipping Point, in a couple of episodes could really mean anything to any character, and it could be multiple things in the same episode. We've seen this before as well. Now, one thing about Pabu, this is a name we don't really have, but there is a droid that is R2P4BU, and its nickname is Pabu, and it was owned by one of the Sato family, who of course was from Rebels, right?
Oh, the sisters?
I don't know. There's not a whole lot. They were part of. I don't know. Again, it's very loose. There's not really basically anything about it, but there is a droid out there called R2P4BU that goes by the nickname of Pabu. Okay. So again, no idea if this is related or anything else, but it's the only thing I've found about what that could possibly mean. So
I'll have to go back and watch that episode now.
I don't know if it's an episode. I didn't really find a link to an episode. It was just like, this is a droid on a YT 2400 freighter, which again is not something the Sato family, drove around either. Right. But anyway, so it's just, it'll be interesting if something like that surfaces that's so obscure or whatever. And it would figure it would be a droid to save the day if it would be, but
yeah. Right.
But no, you're right. I think in the last 4, we knew this was going to happen though. We knew we were going to get to a certain point in the season where it felt like all the momentum, the snowball effect is in full of force. Everything is just gaining steam and momentum. Only a couple small things have to fall in place, right? The Bad Batch have to somehow know where to go to Tantus. If they're going to go to, I mean, they could meet somewhere else, right? But in theory, everything seems to point to Tantus, at least to the activity that's going on Tantus. Whether or not they end up there remains to be seen. But I got to be honest, I'm with you. I think they end up having to be there. But again, they don't have that last piece of information to unlock to know why they should go. And again, now that the Empire knows who Omega is through Lama Su, that storyline will start to resolve itself. And I think we'll probably get that scene. I mean, that episode's got to happen here either this week or next week, right?
Yep.
So I mean, I think we're going to lose Omega here pretty soon, at least from with the central team. We'll have to see how that goes. But again, man, we're getting everything we wanted. This has been a fantastic season so far, in my opinion, just beginning to end as far as enjoyability, but also with these harder hitting episodes like this one, like Clone Conspiracy or Solitary Clone rather. And Clone Conspiracy was good too. But I mean, they're just really, really good. And so I think this is really promising. I hope it's getting the viewers that it deserves. And hopefully this is promising for the future of the Bad Batch beyond a season 2, especially if these last few episodes really do continue this trend of really high quality, not only from the acting and the visuals and everything else, but the writing in particular has just been fantastic.
I wonder how many viewers they're picking up as a result of kind of running this in parallel with The Mandalorian.
Oh, it's got to be helping. I think this has got to be helping.
I would think so. And especially these last 2. I mean, these are not these are not the quote kid episodes by any means, right? I mean, these deal with some very like dark and emotional themes and stories, and the narrative as well. So I would think that people would be seeing these. And there are people that are just like, I don't do animation, and I totally get that, right? You're never going to get them to come over. But if there's somebody that is interested, then but what better way?
It's similar to books, right? Not everybody, they're like, oh, it's a cartoon that doesn't really matter into the main thing. I'm just worried about the movies. The movies are
Yeah,
now
yeah.
extended to the live action television series, even though some people are
Right,
still
right.
resistant there. But so I get it. But again, those days, I mean, the books. I'm not ready to say we're there for the books yet, but with the animated series, it's very much canon. And if people are not watching, then they're missing out on the greater story, I think.
I tell you what, they put Baby Yoda in that final episode of this season, and they'll get some people from over. They'll get people that'll make the switch or at least give it a shot.
The people that give us a shot every single week, Albert?
No, Jonesy, I don't know who is it that gives us a shot every
Our
week.
Patreon members, as well as the
Yeah.
great people who show up for us every week in the chat. And this week tonight we had Chef Chris, Lauren, Steph, Emotional Evolution, Music Train, Jonathan, JJ Skywalker, Sky, Dale, Rob, Jorge, Riley, Miss Sunflower, and Jennifer. I missed anybody? Please do accept my sincerest apologies. Not intentional. If you'd like to watch the stream, if you're listening to this, cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you want to hit the like button on the videos that you watch, or if you want to subscribe and be notified whenever we go live, we'd much appreciate it. We hope you enjoy doing this and seeing us talk about this as much as y'all. Again, please go out there and also check out Lauren's videos, especially the Jedi Battle Scars. Really great review for that book, especially if you're interested in the upcoming video game, which it seems like a number of you are. So that's exciting.
And don't forget to keep pushing Lauren on playing the game and reviewing the game from a storyline perspective, because I think
just watch the
there's a story.
Watch the cutscenes, Lauren. You'll be fine. No one will know the difference.
What else you got?
That's it, man.
Okay, well, this show
what else you want? We got Mando. Yeah, we got Mando coming up. A new episode on Wednesday, of course. Our show will be on Thursday night, same bat time, same bat channel, 9 p.m. Central, and we'll get a title eventually. So right now it's just called Chapter 19. It's super epic and super descriptive, but really looking forward to that one coming off the heels of a really hot episode. Apparently, this one is about nearing an hour long. I'll believe it when I see it. But supposedly in the 50 to 56 minutes, somewhere in that range for the next episode of Mandalorian for episode 3, chapter 19. So
if that's the case, if that's the case, they honestly, every time I see those reported, they usually just they literally give you the exact runtime, and then you still have to pull out everything else. So you got 2 minutes of the preamble, and then you've got another 6 in there for credits and plus the international credit. So, but still, even at 56 minutes, if you subtract about 8, you're still looking at a 48-minute episode.
Yeah, still much longer than usually what we're getting in that 32 to 42-minute range. So, yeah, I mean, and I don't know anybody that's complaining about a longer episode unless it's really boring. But again, Mando picking up a lot of steam as well. I really like, man, that we're getting both of these episodes, and it's hard for us to keep up with it and prioritize sometimes. But man, well, yeah, let me ask that. We didn't really talk about that. All right, so who did it better this week? Was it Mando Chapter 18, Minds of Mandalore? Or was it Bad Batch, The Outpost? Last week, I kind of had Bad Batch winning last week. What about this week?
Well, it's the Bad Batch. I mean, it's not even, I
think they're 2-0.
I love Mando. Don't get me wrong. I'm living for it and I love it. And it's been everything I've wanted in season 3. But in terms of just what's being delivered from a storytelling perspective and how much, it's got to be the Bad Batch. And especially this episode with Crosshair. I mean, come on. This is as good as it gets, in my opinion. So it's a shame that more people aren't watching it, though. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Bad Batch is up 2-0, in my opinion, too. And again, that's not a discredit to Mandalorian. Mandalorian was really, really good this week, too. It's just, man, Bad Batch just brought it super strong. And I think anytime you get Crosshair, again, we don't get enough of him. He's going to own that episode. And it's a great character. And I love all the passion that D. Riley Baker puts into it. You can tell that he's his favorite character because he's just got such a compelling story to tell. And so I like that we're finally making some progress there. So super excited for this week. Yeah.
Rob said Mando, and I'm pretty sure he can take you. So don't piss him off anymore.
Okay? Well, man, me and Rob, man, we're buds.
until you cross his Mando, and then it's,
we'll just talk Republic Commando books and we'll be fine.
Oh, that's right. You can get right back on his good side. I get it.
That's right. Yeah, and Stephanie's telling us to promote Discord. CantinaCast.com/Discord will bring you over if you want to chat with us and all the great people in Discord and all of the other amazing channels that we've got, including some of our friends and some other podcasts as well. So if you like One Hell of a Fanfic, Film Appraisers, The Basement, I hear is, wait, no, hold on. Sorry. Sore subject.
Hey, it's coming back. Just
sure.
Not officially yet. Just wait. It's coming. Been working on it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll believe it. Barrel House Podcast, all the great guys, are still with us. So if you want to come over and check on Discord, hang out with us, have people complain at me while I have Marvel Snap in the Discord channel and how it's pinging and spamming everyone. please join in the hate crew on me. It's fantastic.
Okay, well, on that positive note, we'll get the Discord link next time. Sorry, Dale. Just check it out. Maybe we'll throw it in the comments or whatever here on YouTube. I don't know how that works, but all right, Jonesy's typing up as we speak, and there it is. CantinaCast.com/Discord. Okay, this is the longest outro we've ever done in the history of the show.
That is not true either.
So, with that, we'll see you guys here in just a couple days for episode 3 of season 3 of The Mandalorian.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.